10% leaf drop so far in the northern part of the lower peninsula. Fall is here. Make no mistake about it, the way the temperatures have been, putting all of us hunters in the mood for archery deer season opening October 1st. You remember last year I had a fateful opening day where this deer was in front of my blind. OJ had the camera rolling, and you're going to see he ducked the arrow. We're going to take a look at that in slow motion, some more deer footage, talk about bow hunting outdoor news. So stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. It's Thursday night, time for Michigan Outdoors. October 1st, opening day of bow season for deer. You're in a tree stand, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun doesn't set for a couple hours, but you know you want to be there before the deer start moving. For most of the day, deer lay low, getting up to browse now and then, but spending most of their daylight hours lying down. You watch the edges, the fence rows, the 2-track roads. At most any time, the deer will start moving. They'll be coming out to feed. You're in an oak tree, and this year's been good for acorns. Deer love acorns, so they might be heading your way. No guarantees, but there never are any guarantees in hunting. These open fields to the west look good. Tall grass on the other side for deer to bed. But the wind is blowing from the east, a good chance that any deer to your west will smell you. Because you eat meat, deer are afraid of the scent you give off. They won't be coming from your downwind side. This is a good tree, though. Nice location. Already, the evening is worthwhile. To see deer, you have to look for deer. They're quiet, even silent. They sometimes move quickly, sometimes slowly. You have to be alert. They can appear and disappear right in front of you without you hearing a thing. So keep looking. Ah, there's one. Looks like a doe. No, it's a little buck. He's hungry, but he's alert. Takes a few steps slowly as he eats, but his ears are straining for any strange sound. His eyes are wide open. On the sides of his head, his eyes can see almost 360 degrees. He pauses to listen. Many hunters will see deer like this from their tree stands, too far away for a shot, but close enough to be exciting and interesting. This is what makes hunting white-tailed deer so alluring. It's opening day 1984. I'm dropped off at my tree stand at Lost Arrow Lodge in Gladwin County. Private land, lots of deer, but no guarantees. Here we are, about 5 o'clock in the evening. Deer should be coming out now this morning. Did we have a morning this morning? The camera, by the way, I'll show you where the camera was, and this is where OJ will be with the camera this evening. He's in that blind right there. Looks like a little outhouse, but it isn't. It's just a little outbuilding that's completely dark, and it has a slot cut in the front. She shot through right there. Now, I was, probably 50, 60 yards away. Come on over here, follow me, Oj, because I want to show you where the deer was this morning. I had a big 6-point across the field there, which never got to me. I was watching a little button buck come down through here, and it stood about right here. Like, you can come here, OJ, and see from the point of view of the deer. It was standing here munching on this grass, and I was up in that tree stand right there. Not more than maybe a 10 or 12 yard shot. Now follow me, because I got to go up in the stand here this evening. This is the way we go about an evening bow hunt. 5, 6, 7, 9. That's about 9 yards, so come on over here. This is the way we do it. I have all the gear I need right here in this fanny pack. I have an extra compass. I have my knife. I have some first aid gear. There we go, get the bow strung. Now when you get a bow up in a tree stand, your bows and arrows, most tree stands have a string like this, which you should hang from the stand. I'm going to thread it through my quiver. I personally don't like to keep my quiver on my bow, and I'll just put that knot there right under the string. Now, I'm going to go up in the stand and then haul it up. This is probably the most dangerous part of bow hunting right here. There's some confusion among hunters and law enforcement people on the legality of tree stands that are nailed to trees. Current DNR enforcement policy doesn't nail hunters who nail platforms to trees because it's argued that nails can be removed and such a stand is portable. But here I'm in the tree on opening morning 1984. It wasn't long before a button buck made its appearance. I don't want this deer, though. It's too small. I don't care about its lack of a big rack. In some parts of the state, deer don't grow big racks. But I hunt deer because I enjoy eating venison. Small deer don't provide much meat for the freezer. So more than any other reason, that's why I pass them up. I'm a meat hunter, and most hunters are. Totally honorable in my estimation. Well, watching deer is one of the thrills of bow hunting, seeing how close they'll come to you, seeing what they'll do if they hear you, or see you, or smell you. The alarm call of a blue jay, does that alert deer? Watch and see. Pretty clear evidence that deer do look around and listen when they hear a blue jay. I think they'd be more alert, too, if they smelled a skunk or any strange odor in the woods. That's why I don't use cover scents. I don't think they work. As long as your scent isn't blowing towards the deer, he won't be able to smell you. But he tries. His nose is always working, always sniffing for predators, coyotes, wolves, bears, dogs, or man. Anything that eats meat spells and smells of danger. Not for this deer, though, from me. I'm going to let him pass. It's evening now, still opening day. Another deer comes down the same road, this one a little bigger. I look it over. It's not huge, but it does have 4-inch antlers. It would be tasty, and there's enough meat to make it worthwhile. I mull it over. Would I see a bigger one if I waited? Will I get another chance? That's a proverbial question every deer hunter has to answer. But I decide I'm going to take a shot. It's 10 or 12 yards. How could I miss? Just watch. I thought it was a perfect shot. My arrow flew straight, but the deer ducked. The arrow skimmed over its back. I couldn't believe it. Nobody else could either, until the Michigan Outdoors cameras showed the instant replay. When the deer heard the string launching the arrow, it was startled and it ducked. Maybe you couldn't see it. Watch closely. You can see the arrow over the deer's back. As the tape moves back and forth, watch the deer's back. You can see the arrow cross. Back and forth, the arrow is a yellowish streak, but it's there, a smidgen over its back hairs. Amazing, isn't it? It gives the appearance that the deer actually ducked the arrow, that it saw the arrow coming and squatted to avoid it. But that's not what happened. Nor was my shot a bad one. My shot was right on. The deer dropping to its knees when it was startled was the fly in the ointment. Otherwise, I would have had venison in the freezer. Now, there's been a lot of controversy over what had happened, what you just saw, what the deer actually did, and why. But any way you look at it, this was a great evening in the tree stand. It was exciting. I had the potential of bringing home venison, and I saw something that a lot of bow hunters have speculated on. So I had memories and a good time. That's what bow hunting is all about. These deer face danger every day, year-round, and they don't live that long, even if hunters don't take them in the woods. Chances are hunters won't. But life in the woods is a precarious one for all wildlife. Predators hunt round the clock. Weather and disease are cruel, and nature trims overpopulations by starvation. That's why bow hunters in all good conscience can trim the deer herd for their own consumption. An arrow in the right place puts venison on the table, and my first shot the next morning right here showed that I had the accuracy, even with the game tracker. There's no doubt my arrow flew true, and I deserve some congratulations, I thought. But in that split second that the deer ducked, it got away. You're still skeptical, huh? That the deer ducked because it was startled? Not because it saw the arrow? Okay. Let's go back to a tree stand where I'm shooting, this time with the camera. See if we can find a deer that gets startled, but not by an arrow. See what it does. Here's one that's about to be startled by another frolicking deer approaching from the left. Remember, this deer is just being spooked by another deer, and we want to see its reaction. Keep your eyes peeled. Did you see what it did? There's the deer that spooked him, running just a frolic, I guess, but it scared the deer we were watching for just an instant. Let's go back and look at that instant in slow motion. As the tape is slowed down, it does appear that this buck dropped a little. Ducked, if you will, when it was startled. But look at it slower. It's pretty definite here. The buck drops down on its knees. It squats in order to spring away. That's the only way a deer can jump. It has to squat first. We'll look at this back and forth, and look how far it drops. 8, 10 inches, maybe a foot. Plenty low enough for an otherwise lethal arrow to pass over. My conclusion, any alert deer will duck, arrow or no arrow, when it's startled in Michigan outdoors. There's so much that happens in the outdoors among birds and wildlife and fish. It happens so fast you can't even see it. Major sublunar period, about noontime, noon till 2, something like that this weekend. That's a good time to be out fishing or hunting. You might want to give that a try, and maybe you will come up with something that will put you in our trophy book. Although I haven't heard about any pink salmon in the Osable River when we fished it last week, exactly 1 year ago, a pink salmon was pulled from there that turned out to be the largest pink salmon of 1984, 21 inches long, 5 pounds, 2 ounces. It hit a spawn bag fished by Doug Fraley from Flushing. It was just about a month ago when Jim Painter from Weedman made the local news with his 7-pound, 11-ounce largemouth bass. Came from an area of the state that has produced some of the biggest bass over the past few years, the middle of the Lower Peninsula. This one from Lake Isabella in Isabella County, 25 inches long. It hit a man's razorback at 9:30 p.m. right at dark. And here's another recent catch from Lake Gogebic, a perch naturally, 1 3/4 pounds, but it was only 13.5 inches long, a fat one. Caught on a crawler by Forrest Daly from Kalamazoo. It was taken in mid-August. Here's undoubtedly a surprise catch for Art Carr from Manistee. This is a fish that pulls as hard and fights as viciously as you'll find in freshwater. This is a bowfin, more commonly called a dogfish. It was caught in the morning a few weeks ago from Manistee Lake. Hit a Johnson silver minnow. And holding one of the bigger walleyes that has been caught from his boat this year is Mark Martin from Muskegon. You've seen his night fishing episodes with us on Michigan Outdoors. His same technique produced this nearly 10-pounder. Mark said he was able to pull, get this, a 12-inch sucker minnow and 5 alewives between 3 and 4 inches long from this walleye's stomach. Those came out of the walleye's mouth without cutting it open. This was one hungry walleye full to the brim and one proud fisherman. Mark Martin from Muskegon, our Michigan Outdoors Master Angler of the Week. With bow season coming up just on Tuesday, we're going to launch into a whole fall here of shows on hunting, deer hunting, bow hunting. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, Bob. It's going to be a great fall.
And we have a lot of mailbag questions from people about deer hunting.
This one comes from Sean Taylor of Jackson. After a deer is shot and cleaned and we hang it up, should the deer be covered with anything or should we leave it uncovered? We have been told both and don't know which to do.
Well, it depends on whether you've skinned the deer or not. Now, Sam Fadala, who wrote this book, Game Care and Cookery, on wild game cookery, an excellent book. He also writes an article each issue of our digest, this one on aging for this issue. His question is answered in this book, or this question is, and he says that you really don't need to do that unless you have the deer skinned, because that's when the flies can come in and lay their eggs. You have insects and so on. But you want a game bag, not a plastic bag. Don't cover it with anything that can't breathe. You can buy these for a little over $1 at the store, like cheesecloth, and encase the deer in this to keep the flies or anything away from it, but it has to be able to breathe. But it's only necessary if you've skinned the deer.
Another letter, too, from Theron Allen of Lansing. He writes, I was told that a man who was catching salmon in the spring and fall used a rubber band attached to his line. If you know about this method, I would appreciate information on how to set up the rod.
Well, this is undoubtedly for downrigger fishing because you can use a rod and reel. The idea of a downrigger is to have a weight on a cable which goes down to the bottom or the depth you want, and you attach the line to a clip. Now, what a lot of salmon charter fishermen do is they'll use a rubber band like this, put it around the line to attach to the line. Now, you put this over an open downrigger clip, which is never any problem. You lower the line into the water like that, and that rubber band will hold the lure behind the boat in the water until a salmon hits. And simulate that, Bob. When the salmon hits, breaks the rubber band, and that's how that works. It's not a stream technique.
No, it's definitely not.
It's a downrigger technique, but that's one of the things that you might be able to use maybe next spring. Most of the downrigger fishing is pretty much done by now. But let's see if you folks out there can answer this question right now in our outdoor quiz.
Humans have an average of 32 teeth, and deer also have an average of 32 teeth at maturity. What American mammal has the most teeth? Opossums have a total of 50 teeth. Now that's more than any other North American mammal. Its toothy grimace has been seen on this earth since the time it kept company with dinosaurs over 70 million years ago.
When we picked this deer up, a lot of the people in the neighborhood weren't very happy about us picking it up. But it was because of the concern for children and people that we picked the thing up. And you can see, he's not much of a pet, really.
No, he isn't. See what happens here. See, he could come out to... He was bothering kids.
He had followed some home from school. That was the report we got. He was also picked up on the highway once and taken back home.
Oh, look how he uses these tines and gouges with them.
You saw this deer last week on Michigan Outdoors. It was a tame buck with no fear of humans, using its antlers to fight even when it was in the velvet, 1.5 years old. Wild animals become unpredictable during their mating periods, and deer particularly become dangerous, except, it's said, when the antlers of a buck are sawed off. The loss of antlers is supposed to turn a feisty buck into a pussycat. Take away his aggressiveness, make him manageable. At the Rose Lake Wildlife Research Station, the little buck we taped 2 years ago is now 3.5. It grew a 12-point rack this year and became dangerous, so they sawed the antlers off. But guess what? No change. Deer normally fear humans, even deer that are in cages. But this little buck was a neighborhood pet as a fawn, and it developed no fear of man. Now, just as it wasn't afraid to fight at 1.5 years old when its antlers were in the velvet, it's not afraid to fight when its antlers are sawed off. The danger of wild pets isn't so much in their antlers or teeth or claws or hooves. The danger is in their attitudes. This episode, taped just last week, shows the aggressiveness of a buck during the rut. Bucks show this aggressiveness towards other deer and even toward does that won't mate with them. That's why does stay away from the big bucks in the fall. These big boys are insistent. They've been known to kill does in pens, and on wild deer, removing their antlers eliminates their cranky sexual advances, but not so with a tame buck. He continues his contempt for everything during the rut, and although it's unusual for a deer to exhibit so much hostility, none of the Rose Lake biologists will go into the pen with this deer, even without its antlers. Too dangerous, they say. Leonard Lee Rue, author of Deer of North America, has an article on antlers in the current issue of our Outdoor Digest. Our address for your free copy will be coming up in just a few minutes. Articles on deer, deer hunting, wild game cookery, and a lot more. You can hear more on deer and see more footage of deer behavior like this from our tape library at our Deer Hunters Workshop. I got to admit, Kathy, I'm outdoing Bob on this one.
You are. You're ahead.
He's on his first tangy venison kebab, and I'm already on my second here.
You're making a pig out of yourself right on camera. Can you imagine that?
This is outstanding. Venison kebabs. Kathy, this is a tangy venison recipe.
It is, and it doesn't taste that tangy. It just, I think the marinade
Well, it
is
isn't.
what gives it its name.
It isn't tangy, spicy, peppery.
No,
hot.
it isn't.
It's got to be a difficult recipe, though.
No, it isn't.
Oh, we
No.
never do difficult
No.
recipes, do we, Kathy?
No, not here.
Tastes spicy.
Oh, take a look at it, Baba, how Kathy put this together. Very simple with a list of ingredients. Go ahead, Kath.
Okay, most of the ingredients are in the marinade, which once you get that made, it's not too long. Got mustard and Worcester sauce and liquid smoke, some salt, lemon juice, soy sauce, which will give it more of a salty flavor, and some oil.
Some vegetable oil. About how
Right.
much vegetable oil?
About a cup of vegetable oil, because you're going to want this to marinate all night long. A 1/4 cup of soy sauce.
Soy sauce.
Sounds like a lot, but it really isn't.
A 1/4 cup. No,
Well,
that looks
we're-
like about 2/3, 3/4 of a
Well-
cup.
We added more for salt. Okay, some lemon juice. You need more moisture than just the oil.
Of course, the lemon juice is where the tangy.
That's right. It's where you're going to get
Comes
some
from.
of the, instead of vinegar. Okay, 2 tablespoons of salt.
I wonder if you'd really need that salt
You wouldn't.
with the soy
Not with
sauce.
the soy sauce. And liquid smoke, too, is also salty. Want a dash of that.
Interesting ingredient, liquid smoke.
It is.
Gives it a smoky
and you don't
flavor.
need a whole lot of it. This was what surprised me. quarter cup of Worcester sauce. You don't need, I don't think, a whole lot of it. 2 tablespoons of prepared mustard. And
I
that's
like
going to
it.
give it tangy,
Yeah.
too.
The lemon, the mustard.
Okay, some ground pepper.
I hope you're going to finally put enough pepper in this, Kathy.
Oh, Fred, do I ever put enough pepper in
Now,
for
a
you?
little more. Could you put a little
See,
more?
I never.
Okay, good.
Just for you.
And the
'Cause-
cloves of
Right,
garlic.
because smash some garlic here.
You don't have to mince garlic. like
No,
that.
no, it's really easy. That's a much easier way of doing it.
Put it in
We're
there
gonna
and...
stir this all up.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully to break up the mustard.
And this is just a marinade.
Yes, that's all you need for your marinade. Okay.
The
you can go.
venison, that's the way all venison should be prepared right there,
All
Kathy.
fat removed.
And all of the
Fell,
fell,
trimmings, everything is removed.
the
Just
connective tissue.
lean meat, right.
And that meat could come from any part of the deer, and I know
Yes.
people don't believe it.
Oh, I know.
They say the shank is tough. That's because of the connective tissue.
They don't remove it all, that's
If you take
right.
the time to remove it, you could use shank meat, and it would be just as tasty and tender.
There you go.
Now, how long do you marinate that?
24 to 36 hours overnight, and
Mm-hmm.
keep stirring it so the pieces are evenly marinated.
And there it is,
And-
threaded on the...
Skewers.
On
We
the
use
skewers.
bamboo skewers here.
Bob has been eating nonstop since we've started talking about the recipe. Here they are, tangy venison kebabs. An excellent recipe. Bob, give us your culinary analysis.
Spiced just about right. But believe it or not, I think it could use just a tad more pepper. Otherwise,
Oh,
it's
great.
absolutely, it's perfect, and it's good and tender. It's great.
It is tender. The marinade will tenderize it.
A lot simpler recipe than I thought.
It is a simple recipe. You can have a recipe by writing to us here. Here's one that's about to be startled by another frolicking deer approaching from the left. Remember, this deer is just being spooked by another deer, and we want to see its reaction. Keep your eyes peeled. Did you see what it did? There's the deer that spooked him, running just to frolic, I guess, but it scared the deer we were watching. It does appear that this buck dropped a little, ducked, if you will, when it was startled. But look at it slower. It's pretty definite here. The buck drops down on its knees. It squats in order to spring away. That's the only way a deer can jump. It has to squat first. Well, look at this back and forth, and look how far it drops. 8, 10 inches, maybe a foot. Plenty low enough for an otherwise lethal arrow.